very sorry. I thought I had turned this thing off.
I sent you a message actually referencing page 21 of the book, but I thought it was actually a video of how he talks about the monk on that page being set on with lighter fluid. And he has to jump on a fire. It was actually I know it's not Kung Lao in the Mortal Kombat video, but it was Kung Lao versus RoboCop when it was MK11. I put the passage underneath there. It was just for somebody I suggested the book to. I just wanted to let you know I referenced that page online. But actually, I also wanted to say I liked your description of Wideman's writing in Philadelphia Fire, where you said was a fugitive practice of storytelling. Because what, as I even said with her when she referenced the Ray Allen 1885 fire, that fugitive storytelling vibe is what kind of at least led me to believe to see how John Africa and even after his death and all that, what kind of insight he has when he's not gonna think about being the religious part of his doctrine and spreading that to kids, when he is going to tell them to fight against the police, and when he is going to encourage, a man to, be, inserted with a female or something, like to encourage, black men to be masculine or whatever or whatnot, and it's because he's, as far as I feel, he reacts to how the experiment of MOVE was to be outfitted out of the social order that was around in Philadelphia, right? There's, with the whole last name becoming Africa of the government, there's an outfit of social order that is applicable to, non-blacks in the society. And then some people don't feel like that normal complacency is gonna even get them, to feel justified and to have, as you said, their justice really to be complete. It just feels very unfinished in its structure and the outfitting of that social order. And I also like how you mentioned Margaret Jones's testimony at Clark Park. That was very informative because she's talking about how the outfit of social order that she was kind of persuaded or actually witnessing on MOVE was having a lot to do with accepting, the funk of not showering or trying to please anybody, and the stinking mattresses and beds, and the dog being inside the house and maintenance of that, and really not trying to keep up for anybody but to keep up for yourself. And there's that, and the collective remembrance of black survival also. I feel like that was the point that goes really through towards the end of Philadelphia Fire that you mentioned, of course. And I think what your paper is also, I would actually like to get an email of it. If you could email it to me, that would be great. Yeah, I'd like to receive an email.
Malcolm, why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, my name is Malcolm Parker. I read Philadelphia Fire 2 years ago. It's by J.EDGAR Wideman, yeah, of course, but he also wrote a book on Emmett Till, his father, Lewis Till, the Lewis Till File. I don't know if you guys were fans of that one. I'm born August 28, 1991. The same day, Emmett Till was, he was murdered 1955, I'm saying, but I was born August 28, 1991, like, 50 years after July 25th, 1941. I'm just saying, I'm just saying that was, the day he was murdered and all that. And I have an Emmett Till tattoo on my left arm, but I'll show it to you guys later. It's online. But anyways, I have my presentation behind based on, let me pull it up. It was a PowerPoint, but I've kind of had to work on it because I had crazy traveling here and the rain kind of affected my laptop. So I just, yeah. So, basically, it's due to lack of equity, how can I rule with equanimity? So the line where I say how can I rule with equanimity is in reference to Philadelphia Fire. when he sort of writes some rap lyrics and says he's in Rap City. And I believe this is like on page 161, where he says, "Hey, you all, this is Rap City here, gotta tell, to tell, make you shed a tear. About some dreadlock plugs trying to do their thing, and the evil empire with an evil king." This is kind of where we go with the fugitive perspective here, with the kind of rap kind of informs, he uses some rap lyrics to inform the fugitive perspective. I actually wrote a rap song, Hard Candy, kind of about the MOVE issue and how they kind of can take justification in that fugitive perspective. And I'll get to that, but I wanted to read the kind of rap that he at least a bit more of the lyrics that he wrote in the book. He says, "How can I rule with equanimity when every day the monkey's making a monkey out of me?" And it's because there's even a self. It's one thing for the police to perceive that, you're being a monkey out of it in the social order outfit of abiding the law, or, abiding to the fact that you can be perceived as the threat first before the white person, and operating in Philadelphia and stuff like that. Because, it's also on page 32 where he's also saying that, 10 years or so ago, I lived on Osage, spent half my life at the park, played a lot of ball there. They can still play or call themselves playing. More drinking and snorting or smoking reefer than ball playing. A rowdy bunch now. Used to be a good hoop. I wouldn't know anything about that, but I'd skin Billy or Karen alive if I caught them hanging around here. What I think what that informs is that there's a freedom that people crave outside of the tension that draws them to feel like that's what they can do. And basically, within that tension, they can feel that, they're being, even within themselves, making a monkey out of a release for freedom. And what MOVE tried to do with the doctrine that he had, John Africa, while he didn't write it himself, he basically wanted to show the adolescents and the adults involved what to do with the social platform and what to do with that order, how to react to the order, and how they can wear the adherence to the law. So I also wanted to finish the rest of the page 32 excerpt that I was reading. It says there's pimp mobiles and dope mobiles. Sell you anything you big enough to ask for. Sell you anything you big enough to ask for. So the thing about him saying that, there's pimp mobiles and dope mobiles and selling you anything you big enough to ask for, it's about, I think, also just trying to deal with a medium perception. People, they think that if they're not what's immediately going to be, Barack Obama was president, the first black president, right? They're not immediately going to aspire to even be in a position William Goode was after. They're going to feel isolated and alone on that journey. They're not going to feel like they can bring their community into it. What they can bring their community into is what they can feel big enough to ask for, because that's when they feel like they've got more than one person in that perspective, And they say, and if I know what they're doing, the cops got to know. You think the police do anything about it? Hell no, because now they've been verified in their assumption of them making a monkey out of themselves, right? And to do those activities, it's a gripping perspective. And he says, not till one of these, okay, there's when he references. Little white chicks doing ODs and turns up dead, and then they come up on that corner like gangbusters. Well, nowadays, we have a bunch of graphic stuff that goes on in news like that, right? But that's what kind of the mentality of some sort where I address in my song called Hard Candy. Now, I know Hard Candy, the title, this song was actually produced by someone in South Korea. Now, I talked with him a few times. It was when they first televised the May 13th, 1985 bombing, it was graphically everywhere, globally everywhere. And he was telling me that he made the beat because when he did his research about how the kids were involved and sometimes were, you know, running around naked from the flames and the fire and stuff like that, and see there's the social outfitting of the social order, you know, when he feels like these kids can walk around shirtless and stuff like that and be, you know, embracing and also challenging the stereotype, like who can really make it stop. Like when you have kids really bold enough to send letters, or Ramona Africa bold enough to send letters to the police, like we won't stop acting out in front of you, you know. And I'll play the song. There's actually, I want to finish this excerpt really quick. So yes, it's because when Cujo says, he hears this screaming, "Stop, stop," kids coming out as the cops sights down the blazing alley. And, you know, he wonders basically where JB is. Also when I know that's a fictional character. I know Birdie did survive, who was a real person in that fight. I felt like he mirrored that. And then he wonders basically that lots of shootings, when the suspects tried to break out the house. And then I guess this is an excerpt from someone who was saying that they could have seen a kid with no clothes on screaming, but I let him go because now I know that even living, the way J. Edgar described it to me, he can describe very succinctly that someone can even be living in the anguish of death. You know what I'm saying? Like already just kind of dead already. And basically I kind of have a line in my song Hard Candy that references a lack of equity, lack of fairness, and I feel like that's what generates a paranoia about ruling with equanimity of your own people. Because one thing about Move was, I think he was trying to generate blacks in Philadelphia. Who do they abide by? The white police? Or do they abide by me being someone who owns property in Philadelphia that can house them? Like, shouldn't I govern my own black people if we already can be treated unfairly by the police, right? And that disregard for black life on that and the result of the bombing, I feel like there is a collective remembrance written by J. Edgar Wideman about that, you know? And I'm gonna play the song soon. I just want to read a couple more excerpts. There's a lot I like to cover about. It's my favorite novel about it. Let me see. There's page 136. I believe he talked about the girl who can't remember her name. She was it's about black kids doing Shakespeare plays, and with the social order of outfitting through social order, you know, just like being an African American, being inspired by Shakespeare. And, you know, it's not typical. You're trying, you know, taking on the fact that you can gain insight through observing Shakespeare and being African American. I believe basically what happens is, this is Melissa, yes, a woman named Melissa. She finds basically an empty box of cereal, and there's a roach in it, because I think that what it was trying to basically mirror and juxtapose near was that when we even first go to school as African Americans, when we're introduced to the idea of Shakespeare, and it isn't the stereotypical thing to be interested in, you know, that cereal box, you know, you open, you know, The Tempest or you know, the one Hamlet, you know, and you feel, you know, you just feel like, oh, you know, this is, you know, the stereotype, oh, this is what white people do and all that. And that's like having like a roach in your cereal, when you can't just be having your human, you know, ingenuity to just accept it for the message for what it is, get past the covering, the color, and get into the fact that those identities we can all have in our own lives, you know, in our own families and stuff like that. We can all find situations where, you know, someone's, you know, ever been in pain or suicidal or any of that, you know? And let me see. And you just, you know, he says, "What's wrong with you, girl? You crazy? Nothing but a roach. Close things tight. Nothing won't crawl in the food. Now dump that out and eat your breakfast. Because what he was trying to say, use that as a metaphor for like, sometimes we've really had to just cast away, you know, distractions of stereotypes to just accept it and, you know, dump it away, and consume, you know, the message. And I'm gonna play the song now. So I'm just hoping y'all can do that with me in the context of this fugitive storytelling in this rap song right here. And I'll pause it maybe just to explain, you know, if it's quick. And honestly, I mean, you know, I don't know if you guys watch the Grammys or anything, but you know what I mean? It's nothing like that too crazy, but I'm gonna play it right now. Okay, so the intro, it's kind of referring to feel you in the building, we the only thing to talk about. As someone who is you know, read about Emmett Till, I know, just to step back for a second, and read the Lewis Till File by J.EDGAR Wideman. It's kind of I felt like the chorus, what my producer did there was just to say that if you don't know, actually, John Lopez Lee Part John Africa was born July 26, 1931. Emmett Till was born July 25th, 1941. Just a kind of like a sort of an adult, you know, an adult Leo, if you will, taking on a further perspective of it, and saying that the adult issues that unfortunately they thought Emmett Till was getting to, by just waving at a white lady, that the Philadelphia fire really went and confronted and went into. And like you can talk about that, but it's as short as murder with Emmett Till, you know what I'm saying? But there was a fight with the Philadelphia, you know, 1978 with John Ramp and all that, you know, and to make John Lopez Lee Part, you know, defend himself in trial and all that in 1981, right? Like there was a fight, and there was a building that we're alive in the chorus, you know, it hasn't exploded, and that's what's to talk about, because basically in that building we can at least explore our individual selves, so that when we're outside an individual, that we can share and multiply and number, you know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna play the rest of the song. I need, because I don't have any disease of anything minor or what's that, and that's the struggle in my life is between me, as you can see. Even then we're feeling in the building, that conclusion on the no matter what's at stake when there's any equity, no matter what any in it. So yeah, and I say no matter what text I read, because I was reading this novelist too. No matter if there's any equity, let me get to my slide here. Where was it? Oh gosh. So yeah, equanimity. So how can I rule with equanimity is what he said in a rap verse in the novel, right? Due to a lack of equity and fairness, right? So I don't even want to feel like playing the whole rap song if I'm running out of time. That doesn't matter. But it's a social order outfitted to bring equanimity to the individual, or to the individual that needs to share themselves outside in the name of injustice and getting their perspective validated, right? So I felt like the novel of Philadelphia Fire really does justify that situation. And I'm also gonna I'm gonna go back to the excerpt here. Let me see. Have you guys read Philadelphia Fire? Okay. Oh, just once. Okay. Yeah, I've read it once. It's a good one to reread. He's let me see. I'm gonna get over to how long has it been? Okay, so it's towards 101. There's a lot I wanted to put in the slides. My laptop didn't save. Okay, let me get this one right here. Yes. So basically it's when he describes this, dear Mr. Wideman, on the move, I'm writing to you. An article I read a piece on about the 1985 MOVE organization, or at least the conclusion of it. In the letter, he kind of makes sure that he can observe, because when he reveals that in his writing, I feel like he really lets the reader know that he's even got someone listening in on his perspective. He raps as if he's like on the Truman. I mean, sorry, he writes the novel as if he's on the Harry Truman Show. I feel like, and as if people also have been on that and kind of get into a conclusion, you know, of his other lyrics right here when he says, the odds were too heavy, they had to go. It was like Tyson throwing on a little kid. The kid was doomed, whatever he did. Down they went in bullets, water and flame. It was murder one by another name, murder one by any name. So basically when that happens, he does have this word and sentence in the novel about drowning in dust. So I feel like that also has a lot to do with Margaret Jones's testimony, drowning in dust. You know, because when Margaret was explaining her testimony at Clark Park, she was talking about how, like, there was a lot of, you know, internal, I don't want to say internal funk, but an internal negligence to abiding by a social order of care, because that was their way of rejecting the enforced regulations that they felt were imposed on them that made them so marginalized. It's certain movements like the MOVE movement. I feel like Philadelphia Fire is so much trying to go in the retrospective of it, is saying that when you react to social order being outfitted, and you trying to adjust, and then saying that you can actually reject it and see if though they can just keep the negligence and not try to fight you back. Because what a lot of people have told me is, you know, there's a certain negligence that the police could have, but they wanted to see if, you know, there's a fight, and that's why I think when, let me see, so I think let me see, on May 13th, okay, so yes, yeah, it was it's a lot of destruction, but that's why I think it was important that he really collected a Black experience connected to the trauma. And while there are other Black perspectives described in Philadelphia Fire that aren't so connected to the trauma, like other characters when he visits, let me see, there was a character, I mean, it does get secular with his descriptions. He describes, you know, different parts of the human body and all that. Let me see, there was, oh gosh, what was it? I'm sorry, I really had a crazy trip up here. So, yeah, he said there's all kinds of mess in the weeds. Piece of bicycle, cat bones, cat box, shoes, a mattress, the nastiest thing melting down like a dead body with ugly shit inside when the skin rots. Wonder who been laying on that thing, so many nasty spots look like measles or some spattery diarrhea disease all over it. Jump on it and bounce till one of them rusty springs pop through and tear up Lester's leg. Gash him from knee to ankle till he howls like a stuck pig. Leave it alone then. Stuffing, rot out, gets wet, stink like pus. Be your mama's bed. Be where she sell her pussy. Roaches and water bugs and spiders crawling in there too. One of them slimy black bugs be your daddy. See, you ain't cool until you cut your whole damn leg off. Running through here be glass, shit in the stove, Cadillac fender, and a kitchen sink. Dog dookie, junkie puke, soft banana, kind of mess you slip and fall. Wasn't there 5 minutes ago. These warriors piss in a river. enough pee drown you, you come running through here when we finish. So, and he's also, the last sentence is, wasn't nothing a minute ago though, then when you come flying across the lot, being knee deep in piss, you be drowned before you know it. So, I feel like when he really kind of concludes that idea that he said in the beginning of the novel about drowning in dust, because it's basically about, you know, how he kind of asserts himself past a social order that's outfitted for him that doesn't really corroborate the things that he opens when he opens the cereal box that he sees, you know. He sees the cereal box and expects to see what he can consume come out of there. But as soon as he puts on an outfitted social order of, you know, what is suited the first class citizen as African American, we weren't that initially when we first opened our cereal box in the 1800s and all that, you know. And I feel like it's like how Richard Allen, you know, the church, you know, there's it's a peaceful thing, you know, like getting teachings of the Bibles to African Americans and getting them to read, and then now you have 100 years later a doctrine that John Lopez Leapart, John Africa, wants to enable people to also have, you know, stricter diet and workout regimen, and, you know, be more fit, and to have weapons that the police have. That's really explored in Philadelphia Fire, definitely till the end, and it's a process that he says, you know, is drowning, you know. Drowning, and they kind of, you know, at the drum line at the end, when they're at the drum line, they have to make it into a certain beat. They have to do it to a music. They have to be composed. Because if it becomes a mess, you kind of don't want to become inflamed. And I'll just play the rest of the song, and I'll be done. So yeah, sorry about that. I'm letting it play.
Only thing to talk about can't be anything hard that can be said to be some candy. For this problem of presenting my testosterone, I don't give a fucking remedy. It's not what any PHS will show I need, because I don't have any disease of anything minor or whatsoever. That's the issue. Live my life is me to live, as you can see. Even then, we're feeling in the building, that conclusion on the energy. No matter what's at stake when there's any equity. No matter what any energy lives when I can expand upon what is what I infer, and this is what I'm demanding to be assured. These streets a lot more advancements to be needed into what's preferred. It's your issue with bitches in the candy that brings your heart easy with a burn. Cross over the turnover on her front side before I enter with an impact of lessons, giving her goosebumps with my every turn. What's the first jump or stick if you want to think I'm bummed out? Give it ain't talking about we just get these paper and stages ain't what got me. Ain't like this rehearsal ain't for free. When I'm hard on my last name, renegade with no stage curve, my rage. Give it because I want to be playing, you certainly know we empty. Transpired in Philadelphia, Mississippi, or 95. Know what I'm doing when I'm doing what I want to usually. Think I know when to do what I need when there's something done differently. See a chance to raise my heart, can't say nah, energy. You should know when it doesn't need to bother anyone. Turn up anything consider the scene of anything that could be a hard conspiracy. 85 well, in this moment, the history currently silent. History of it, I'm not reviving, not chicken shit, nor cheap shots, stricken from a deed. The best receives no wing from after a favor. Speech has these sacrifices that were grave. Birds and graceful, no order, no unclaimable mistakes. Wrong social order line was shameful, no right order before any of it wrong. It's explosive, hateful, ignorant, spots, lift, no twist, with my medical complications. Parked on my last name, renegade with a stage script, I rage against this one. When I get over my own misery, and it's the only thing I know that could ever inhibit me. Rob Peter Pan, feeling and run all the dreams since he's the cream, and also why ain't no one constant shit on the reason. Also,
I feel like the song took me to the rap lyrics that were talked about in the novel. Like, I just feel like my goal, I'd like to introduce that to the incarcerated students that you teach. I think they would be able to get that there. So basically, it's kind of getting the perspective of how can I rule with equanimity when Every day them monkeys making a monkey out of me. You wouldn't believe the ordinance brought to bear to drive them rosters out their lair. Dreads didn't falter, they fought toe to toe, but the odds were too heavy, they had to go. It was like Tyson throwing on a little kid. The kid was doing whatever he did, down they went in bullets, water and flame. That's why the song Hard Candy has its name. That's how I'm gonna conclude it. So, yeah. So yeah, I think that's what I have to say about it. I'd like to discuss further, of course, afterwards, but to contribute more to the discussion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to give you a short version of this so we have time for conversation. The title is Inventing J.EDGAR Wideman Being Black at the University of Pennsylvania. In 1963, Jean Shalit wrote an article for Look magazine entitled The Astonishing John Wideman. In the piece, the author discussed Wideman's rise from a poor black neighborhood in Pittsburgh to great success at an Ivy League university. The piece combined journalism with interview, thus allowing Wideman some control over the narrative. Shalit later went on to celebrity himself as a commentator for the Today Show with the big mustache. I don't know. In some ways, this might be considered a puff piece about Wideman at Penn. After all, it notes that some of the faculty referred to Wideman as a genius, offering multiple examples of his intellectual prowess. And although he was an all-star and captain of the basketball team, Shalit notes that he was attending the university on a prestigious Benjamin Franklin academic scholarship. Readers are also told that he got along with all students, both black and white. Part of what makes this a puff piece is first, it does not probe beneath the surface, and second, Wideman is something of a trickster when it comes to being interviewed. Shalit straightforwardly quotes Wideman about not being concerned about race, though he was one of only 10 black students in a class of 1,700. In a later text, the basketball coach notes that Wideman was very unhappy and wanted to leave the university early in his freshman year. The coach persuaded him to stay until the beginning of basketball season. But even that commitment was complicated, since he had to learn an entire new way of playing the game. He was accustomed to the fast, loose, individualistic style of the streets, but had to shift to a much more structured, team-oriented game. The article also makes the assumption that he had a black girlfriend, reinforced by a photograph and by a white high school friend of John's. That is, in the photograph, he is shown with several black students sitting on a couch, and next to him is this young black woman. And so Shalit sort of makes the assumption that this is his girlfriend. And then a white high school friend who he also talked to pointed out that John always said that he never wanted to be seen on the street with a white girl. Right. Now, the complication of all of this is, of course, that Wideman, at the time of the interview, this is senior year at Penn, at this moment, he is dating Judith Goldman from a highly respectable Jewish Boston family who's also a student at Penn. And obviously, this is kept very strictly secret. Shalit also makes, and by the way, then once John receives his Rhodes Scholarship and goes to Oxford, Judith goes with him, and a year or so later they get married in England, and then come back to the States. Charlotte also makes this an American bootstrap story, talking about how Wideman comes from a poor black neighborhood, but that his parents, in order to maximize his educational opportunities, actually moved from Homewood to Shadyside so that he would get a higher quality education. Now, what's also involved in that, and this happened, there were 5 children in the family. So the first 4 of those children get some experience at Shadyside. But then they can't afford to live in Shadyside, so they have to move back to Homewood. And when they do that, Robbie, the youngest, never got to be at Shadyside. And he talks in Brothers and Keepers about how he sort of resented John for many years because of that experience. Robert just didn't get the advantages. And then the last thing I will note that Charlotte doesn't note is that there's an incident of a confrontation with a white student about black culture. And this is a quote from the white student. So who do you like? Got everyone, man. Leadbelly, Big Bill Brunsey, Lightning and Lemon and Sonny Boy. Now, first of all, what intrigues me is that it seems to be important to the student to use the first names of all of these performers, as though he knew them personally. You know, these are my buddies, these old black men from the 20s and 30s are my buddies. And John points out that what he knows is R&B and early rock and roll, because that's what went on in his neighborhood. That was the music of his community. And this white student then labels John's choices as junk and crap. Right. Now, there is a further complication in this story. The event took place in the room of one of the other African American students, a young man named Daryl, who we hear about in later points. And Daryl, unlike John, came from a rather privileged family. He had gone to Putney Prep and lived in a well-to-do community. Had his own troubles with race matters when the family of his white girlfriend found out about Daryl and had their daughter leave Putney as a result. So we have, so Daryl is there and just sits quietly. And one of the things John says later about this event is that he just didn't understand. He had trouble understanding the behavior of this white student. He said, nobody in the world he grew up in confronted you that way. Nobody looked at you and said, what you're talking about is crap. Now, you might suggest that in a sort of side glance, you know, but you didn't do it directly, because that could lead to provocations. All right. So, what do we make of this 60 years after the fact? I would suggest that Shallot seeks to use Wideman as an exemplar of a new America in 1963. In the midst of the civil rights movement, he constructs a non-racial black man who is proof of what the country is becoming. Everything will be all right if we just have more John Widemans, okay, who adapt and succeed on the terms established by whites. But I would point out to you that I believe Wideman is playing his own game here. He allows Shallot and the readers of Look to believe what they want to believe. It gives him opportunity to study in England, to marry the woman of his choice, and to have the career he wants. He uses the space others condescendingly give to him to invent the self he wants to be. That's it. For the moment.
Absolutely.
Your paper reminds me of what the unnamed narrator's grandfather in Invisible Man said.
Yes.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
grandfather's warning.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is in Reuben the story of Wally. And one of the things that Wally talks about, Wally, we are told, is a recruiter for a university basketball team. I'm thinking Penn, because why not? And Wally tells this story of going into a restroom in some relatively isolated place, and there's a white man at the sink. And Wally's tension, his racial stress, becomes so great that he says that he murders this guy, rather violently murders this guy. Now, we don't know if that story is true in the novel. That is, whether Wally actually did something like that, or whether it's just something that he makes up. But it seems to me that it's fascinating that Wideman would tell that kind of story about a basketball recruiter and his real attitude toward white people. That there is an anger in this John Wideman that he doesn't allow to break through very often. So anyway, that's my response there. I was going to, the story about the balloon that only appears in that only, well, and it appeared in a collection of essays about Mumia.
Oh yeah.
And I'm wondering why he would pick that place, because that's a book about, it's a book of essays about why Mumia should be freed, that he was unfairly treated, and so forth. And Wideman's contribution to this, and I think his name is even on the cover as an editor, is to tell this story, this 18th century story about a black man going up in a balloon. Like, huh? I mean, yeah, he's at Walnut Hill prison, or jail, really. But, why does he tell that one there? It's another sort of curious act on the part of Wade. Yeah.
I guess, so I'm very, very newbie about Wideman. but like I've really enjoyed kind of learning about his work through the way you all present these arguments. And I feel like part of what's coming out to me is this whole issue of sort of who controls the narrative. Like who controls this narrative of like Enlightenment science, like going up in a balloon, you know? And like, so Wideman has to intervene in the story. And I also really love the connections you drew with the global south between Philadelphia, PA and Philadelphia, Mississippi. Like that just came out in the song. It was so helpful.
Also, about the sign, there was an excerpt, really why I called it Hard Candy, more towards that with the producer, because one of the shooters, Cujo, the character in Philadelphia, interviewed. It's in the beginning of the novel. He finishes his testimony by saying, "No, I didn't." When he looks at one of the kids running out the fire of the burning home naked, he says, "No, I didn't shoot then. Others shot." Lots of shooting when the suspects tried. He still sees these kids like suspects, you know, just of what they know and can say to other people from what the doctrine is even introduced to them. But I didn't shoot, not then. Because what I just seen was just a kid with no clothes on. I let him go. And hold on, he said, only did he, this is what Wideman says personally through Cujo when he's wondering about the testimony. Cujo wonders and says, before he admits that about not pulling the trigger and letting him go, did he pull the trigger? Only later, as he's interrogated and must account for the rounds fired and unfired, does it become clear to him that what he saw was a naked boy, a forked stick with the dick. So, I mean, I don't know if you guys go on Urban Dictionary about hard candy references, whatever, you know, a male organ dick, you know, whatever. And I mean, I just want to repeat what he says. He says, only later, as he's interrogated, he must account for the rounds fired and unfired. Does it become clear to him that what he saw was a naked boy, a forked stick with a dick? Now, the thing is, what I thought was, what he saw, what he's seeing is there's violence hailing down, and all he has is a certain enabled presence that is just a presence, but now he has to think is even a protection amongst violence, you know, because he's at least a boy is what they're saying, and his fork is to consume food, is his presence of his masculinity in the presence of danger. Now, I know, you know, I was referring to Philadelphia, Mississippi, and Mississippi, 1985, and what happened in Philadelphia, Mississippi, with the two Jewish men and the black man, right? And that was racist, especially unfortunate. And basically, also wanted to refer to Money, Mississippi with Emmett Till, just because I remember there's a photo of Mamie Till just speaking in front of a sign that said food across it. It just really struck me, you know? And just, you know, how he just kind of replies, you know, Emmett Till was castrated and murdered, and how he says that, but because what I seen was a kid with no clothes on screaming, I let him go, and how Cujo is described by Wideman as interpreting him as knowing that he saw a naked boy, a forked stick with a dick, you know, and like, basically he's now running out the house, you know, starving, knowing his adults, the adults that he's had to take from are now, you know, dead and manifested from his boyhood to death. So back to what you were saying, Keith, about the boy in the balloon. You know, does he travel up? You know, as a balloon, like, you know, does it, like, is it, I think what Wideman was after to find out is what does get exploited then? And how does he feel as a black man, like what not to exploit? And does he feel that it's up to him to exploit what he puts out there? You know?
Well, there's that scene in Philadelphia, cattle killing, where another artist, George Stubbs, is hanging out with Liam, who is a slave, and Liam is an artist, and he wants to learn how to draw, and Stubbs is an artist, and Stubbs figures out anatomical drawing by looking at dead people, And there's a scene where a young black woman has died in childbirth, and Liam always kind of travels with Stubbs to look at things, but when he sees the exploitation of a young black woman and her body being taken apart so that Stubbs can learn his art, he's like, yeah, I don't want to be a part of learning art then. If it means to exploit someone, who looks like me, who is my mother, I can't go that far. And then he never, creates again because he's so stifled by that
Until
knowledge.
toward the end of his life, when he
When
started.
he starts it,
indicating-
well, it's just telling those stories to the
Yeah.
future, yeah. But it's like he can't fathom that the body is so exploited by the white man that he's like, I don't want to be a part of this.
Right.
And the
Yes.
body in that case, excuse me, I'm not familiar with Wideman's work, except for your wonderful papers, but, so the body then is just a thing, right? It's not the form of a rational creature. of
Right.
human being.
So whether it's science or art, in
Yeah.
that time period, the African American body is just
Yeah.
raw material for.
Yeah.
I had a question about, Keith, like earlier, you were talking about Wideman taking time to sort of study the African American canon so he could go back and teach. Is there any record of his engaging with Frank Webb's work? Because I feel like The Garees and Their Friends is a novel about a black community in Philadelphia that has to become radicalized because they're being attacked,
Right.
from without. And it just sounded so much like in the narrative of the stuff that you were talking about, Tracy. So I was just really curious
I
about
don't
that.
know.
I don't know. I
don't know.
really don't.
I'll have to check on that, cause
Yeah.
So I
Most
feel
of-
like
But
the
he
way
does.
he reads, it's the
Yeah.
kind of thing I could see him
Yeah.
engaging with.
And and you also have John Africa in Two Cities,
Mhm.
where you have the photographer
Yep.
who takes photographs but doesn't advance the film.
Yeah.
And so their photographs sort of
Like
stacked on top of each
layers,
other,
yeah.
basically.
Cause that's the only way to see
Excuse me.
someone.
Yeah.
It was another
But
novel.
he sits on,
Two
he meets,
Cities.
he meets.
Brothers
John
and
Africa
Keepers
on
was
a
another
bridge,
one, right?
and They stand
Yeah,
and talk.
that's like
and he
more
takes
of a
pictures
memoir.
it.